Everyone smiled at me that night, but no one saw the knife waiting in my back. Olivia Bennett's life looked perfect from the outside: a promising career in New York City, a bright apartment overlooking the skyline, and a best friend, Jessica Harper, who she trusted more than anyone. People admired Olivia for her intelligence, her ambition, and her optimism, but no one saw the cracks forming beneath the surface. It started with the promotion. After years of late nights, skipped weekends, and pushing herself harder than anyone else at Harrison and Co., Olivia was finally made team leader for one of the company's biggest campaigns. She called Jessica immediately, bursting with excitement. "I knew you'd get it, Liv. You worked so hard," Jessica said with an overenthusiastic hug. But Olivia noticed it, a flicker of something dark in her eyes. She ignored it. Maybe it was nothing. Then the problems began, small at first. Emails misdirected, client complaints that didn't make sense, then whispers in the office. Mistakes she didn't make were blamed on her. Projects she worked on for months were suddenly considered failures. Every day felt heavier than the last, and Olivia realized with growing horror that someone was sabotaging her life. And the person she trusted most? Jessica. Olivia tried to ignore it, thinking it could be coincidence, but the signs were everywhere. Jessica helped Olivia by reviewing her work, giving advice, suggesting edits. Olivia, trusting her friend, followed the advice, only to have it backfire in ways that seemed impossible. A campaign that should have been a success received criticism. A client who had praised Olivia suddenly complained. Each misstep seemed carefully orchestrated, designed to ruin her. Her colleagues, who once celebrated her achievements, began avoiding her. Invitations to lunch disappeared, calls went unanswered, gossip followed her wherever she went. Olivia realized with chilling clarity that Jessica had been carefully dismantling her life piece by piece while smiling and pretending to be her friend. One evening, after a particularly humiliating meeting where a client blamed her for mistakes she didn't make, Olivia confronted Jessica at a quiet cafe near Central Park. "Jess, are you behind this?" Olivia asked, keeping her voice steady despite the fear building inside her. Jessica froze, then laughed lightly. "Olivia, what are you talking about? I would never hurt you. You're imagining things." Olivia wanted to believe her. She wanted it to be a misunderstanding. But deep down, she knew the truth. Every ruined opportunity, every lost client, every whispered conversation that undermined her, all of it led back to Jessica. That night, Olivia sat in her apartment, staring at the city skyline. The lights that once filled her with dreams now felt like a cruel joke. She thought about every secret she had shared with Jessica, every moment she had trusted her. Betrayal wasn't just losing a friend, it was losing someone who had been like family. Tears ran down her cheeks, but anger replaced fear. Olivia made a decision. She would leave New York, rebuild herself quietly, and learn everything she could about Jessica's life, her habits, her weaknesses. When the time was right, she would return, and she would take back everything she had lost, not with blind rage, but with careful, calculated strategy. Olivia returned to her hometown in Ohio, where the quiet streets and familiar faces gave her space to think. She reconnected with her brother Mark, who reminded her of her strength and resilience. She took on small freelance projects, rebuilding her reputation and confidence without attracting attention. She started keeping detailed notes on Jessica's social and professional life, studying patterns, weaknesses, and secrets. Revenge wasn't about anger, it was about precision. Every move would count. Days turned to weeks, and Olivia's determination grew. She spent hours analyzing every past interaction with Jessica, every subtle comment, every misstep that seemed accidental. Slowly, a plan began to form. Olivia would return stronger, smarter, and unstoppable. Jessica thought she had won, but Olivia's fire was just beginning to burn. One night, as Olivia walked along the quiet streets in Ohio, she whispered to herself, "This isn't just revenge. This is about taking back my life." The betrayal that had once crushed her spirit now fueled her determination. She wasn't a victim anymore. She was a strategist, a planner, and soon Jessica would learn that trust is a weapon, and Olivia was about to wield it like no one ever had. Olivia Bennett arrived back in Ohio with one goal in mind: rebuild her life, reclaim her strength, and prepare for the days she would return to New York stronger than ever. The familiar streets of her hometown, quiet and unassuming, felt like a safe haven compared to the chaos she had left behind. Here, she could think, plan, and grow without Jessica's shadow looming over her every move. Her apartment in New York had been sleek, modern, and perfect, but it was also a prison. Every corner reminded her of betrayal, of whispered lies and ruined opportunities. In Ohio, Olivia felt free. She could breathe again, and for the first time in months, her mind started to focus. The first step was healing herself. Olivia spent mornings jogging along tree-lined streets, clearing her mind and rebuilding her confidence. She reconnected with her brother, Mark, who had always been a quiet source of support. He didn't ask many questions, he just reminded her of what she already knew. She was strong, capable, and resilient. "You don't need anyone to define your worth," he said one evening as they walked along the river, "and you sure as hell don't need people like Jessica in your life." Mark's words hit Olivia in a way nothing else had. She realized that revenge wasn't just about punishing Jessica, it was about reclaiming her own life. She needed to rebuild her career, her network, and her confidence. Olivia began taking freelance marketing projects, starting small with local businesses. Every success, every positive client review was like a tiny victory. Slowly, her confidence returned, and she began to remember the Olivia she had been before betrayal had shattered her. But Olivia knew confidence alone wouldn't be enough. She needed information. She needed to understand Jessica, her motivations, her weaknesses, and the patterns in her life that would allow Olivia to strike when the time was right. She started quietly following Jessica's professional and social movements. Through LinkedIn connections, social media, and casual conversations with mutual acquaintances, Olivia pieced together a detailed picture of Jessica's life. She discovered where Jessica thrived, where she faltered, and how fragile her carefully curated reputation really was. Every lie Jessica had used to destroy Olivia was now a clue to her weaknesses. One evening, Olivia sat at her desk, laptop open, a notebook beside her filled with observations. She wrote down every detail: Jessica's habits, her network, her pride, her insecurities. Olivia knew that in the game of revenge, knowledge was power. The more she knew, the more precise her plan could be. At the same time, Olivia started preparing herself emotionally. She practiced calmness, patience, and strategic thinking. Revenge, she realized, wasn't about acting out of anger, it was about control. She began visualizing scenarios, thinking several moves ahead, imagining how Jessica would react to different situations, and noting the risks. Her days in Ohio passed quickly. By day, she rebuilt her career. By night, she strategized. Every success she earned, every secret she uncovered, every connection she made brought her closer to the day she would return and begin again. But Olivia wasn't reckless. She understood that Jessica was cunning, manipulative, and ruthless in her own way. Olivia had to be smarter, subtler, and patient. She couldn't rush. One wrong move and Jessica could ruin her plans before they even began. Olivia also began reconnecting with old friends who had drifted away during her time in New York. These friends, once loyal and supportive, became allies in her quiet rebuilding. They offered guidance, encouragement, and occasionally inside information on Jessica's movements. Every new piece of knowledge was a building block for her ultimate plan. The months passed and Olivia's confidence grew stronger every day. Her career projects flourished, her network expanded, and her sense of control returned.
The anger that had once consumed her transformed into focus. She wasn't just preparing to take revenge, she was preparing to dominate, to reclaim her life, and to show Jessica that betrayal comes with consequences. Then, one afternoon, Olivia received a message from a mutual acquaintance in New York. Jessica had been bragging about a new project, a big opportunity that could make her career skyrocket. Olivia smiled to herself. The trap was forming, and Olivia was ready to lay the first stones. Her plan wasn't just about exposing Jessica, it was about dismantling her carefully built life in a way that was precise, undeniable, and inevitable. Olivia had learned her lesson. Patience was power, preparation was victory, and revenge was more than just retribution. It was a statement. As Olivia looked out the window of her Ohio apartment that evening, watching the sun set over the quiet streets, she whispered to herself, "You think you've won, Jessica, but you don't know what's coming. I've been preparing for this moment, and when I return, everything you've built will crumble, and I'll be standing on top, stronger than ever."
Olivia Bennett had spent months rebuilding herself in Ohio, quietly strengthening her career, gathering information about Jessica, and preparing for the day she would strike. She was no longer the same person who had arrived broken and betrayed. She was focused, patient, and sharp. Every detail she had learned about Jessica's life was a potential weapon, and Olivia knew exactly how to use them. Her first step was to understand Jessica's world more deeply. Olivia created a detailed map of Jessica's professional life, colleagues she could trust, influential clients, patterns of behavior, and the small cracks in her public persona. Olivia had learned to see the hidden currents behind Jessica's confident smile, the moments of insecurity, the decisions made out of pride, the people who could be swayed if approached correctly. Olivia began reaching out to mutual acquaintances in New York under the guise of networking. Every casual conversation was carefully crafted to gather insight. Who was Jessica close to now? Who envied her? Which clients trusted her blindly? Olivia wrote down every tiny piece of information, connecting dots that Jessica had assumed were invisible. Her first tactical move was subtle but strategic. Olivia knew Jessica was working on a high-profile marketing campaign for a major client, one that could define her career. Olivia sent a friendly email to a mutual industry contact, casually mentioning a concern about Jessica's campaign strategy. The email was phrased as a harmless suggestion, but Olivia knew it would spark doubt. Soon, small questions began creeping into the client's mind, and Jessica, unaware, started feeling pressure. Meanwhile, Olivia strengthened her own credibility. Freelance projects became high-profile, with glowing reviews shared across professional networks. Olivia's reputation quietly grew, positioning her as a rising star outside Jessica's influence. Each success wasn't just rebuilding her confidence, it was establishing leverage for the moments to come. Olivia also began cultivating allies within Jessica's social circle. She knew Jessica thrived on appearances and influence, relying on friends and colleagues to maintain her image. Olivia approached former friends of Jessica's carefully, rekindling old connections while subtly demonstrating her competence, loyalty, and intelligence. Without anyone noticing, Olivia was creating a network of people who would support her indirectly when the time for revenge arrived. By the middle of the year, Olivia had a clear understanding of Jessica's weaknesses. Pride was at the center of her friend's life. Jessica needed to be seen as flawless, always ahead, always admired. A single mistake, exposed strategically, could unravel the image she had built so carefully. Olivia began envisioning the scenarios, planning the timing, and preparing contingencies. She knew this was a game of patience and precision. One false move could alert Jessica to the threat.
The next step required finesse. Olivia orchestrated a situation where a minor project Jessica was handling was subtly mismanaged, not enough to ruin her immediately, but enough to plant doubt among colleagues. She made sure that the problem seemed accidental, unavoidable, and not linked to her. When Jessica faced the first small setback, Olivia observed quietly from a distance, taking notes of her reactions. Her frustration was subtle, but telling. Her confidence had begun to crack. Olivia also prepared for the emotional aspect of her plan. She understood that revenge wasn't only about professional setbacks. It was about showing Jessica that trust could be weaponized. She practiced restraint, patience, and the art of appearing uninvolved. Every interaction, every word, every move was calculated. She had transformed from the betrayed to the strategist, always several steps ahead. As the months passed, Olivia's plan began to accelerate. She continued to monitor Jessica closely, noting patterns and vulnerabilities. She had learned that Jessica often exaggerated her accomplishments to peers and clients, relying on perception rather than substance. Olivia began collecting proof of these exaggerations, quietly archiving every email, report, and public claim Jessica had made that didn't align with reality. This evidence would later serve as undeniable proof when the time for the ultimate strike arrived. One evening, Olivia looked out from her Ohio apartment, the quiet streets glowing under the soft light of street lamps. She had everything she needed: preparation, knowledge, patience, and focus. She whispered to herself, "You've underestimated me, Jessica. You thought I was gone, broken. But I've been preparing for this. You won't see it coming." Olivia Bennett had waited for this moment for months. Every observation, every connection, every small move had been carefully planned. Now, she was ready to turn the tables. Jessica Harper had spent years undermining her, destroying her confidence, and taking advantage of her trust. But Olivia was no longer the same person. She was calm, focused, and precise, a strategist ready to reclaim what was hers. The first phase of Olivia's plan was subtle, but devastating. Jessica's reputation at work had always been built on charm and appearances rather than substance. Olivia knew that even the smallest crack in this facade could create chaos. She began by quietly reaching out to colleagues and clients Jessica relied on, planting doubts in their minds. Not accusations, just observations phrased as casual questions. "Did you notice some inconsistencies in the last report?" Olivia would ask. Or, "I was wondering if the timeline makes sense. Have you checked all the numbers?" Nothing aggressive, nothing that could be traced back to her, yet every comment added a small seed of uncertainty in Jessica's mind. At first, Jessica ignored the signs. She assumed stress or minor mistakes were causing the whispers and questions. But then, the first noticeable setback occurred. A client, previously loyal to Jessica, requested a review of her work, something Olivia had prepared by carefully tracking inconsistencies in Jessica's reports. Jessica tried to handle it gracefully, but the cracks were showing. Her confidence, once unshakable, began to falter. Olivia watched quietly from Ohio, staying distant and patient. She had learned that the best revenge was strategic, not impulsive. Every move she made was calculated, designed to weaken Jessica without exposing herself. The beauty of the plan was that Jessica wouldn't even know Olivia was orchestrating the events until it was too late. Next, Olivia targeted Jessica's social circle. She knew Jessica relied on admiration and influence to maintain her image. Olivia subtly approached former acquaintances and colleagues, rebuilding trust and demonstrating competence, while subtly showing that Jessica's achievements were not as flawless as she claimed. Stories of Jessica's missteps, once whispered, now carried credibility because Olivia's new allies were trusted voices. Olivia also used technology to her advantage. She monitored social media activity, professional posts, and public events, finding opportunities to expose discrepancies in Jessica's self-presentation. Every exaggerated claim, every boast about success that didn't align with reality was carefully documented and ready to be used at the right moment. The real turning point came when Olivia discovered a critical weakness: Jessica's dependence on a major client to secure her next promotion. This client was highly influential and valued transparency and accuracy. Olivia had the evidence to demonstrate that Jessica had misrepresented her work and exaggerated her role in previous projects. Olivia began planting subtle clues, making sure they appeared accidental. She forwarded carefully edited documents to the client, highlighting errors Jessica had overlooked. She ensured that everything seemed like a natural discovery, not a trap. When the client began to notice inconsistencies, Jessica panicked, unaware that every move had been predicted and orchestrated by Olivia. The pressure on Jessica intensified. She made mistakes, small at first, then larger. Colleagues who had once admired her began to question her competence. Clients became cautious, double-checking her work. Jessica's confidence, her greatest asset, was crumbling under the weight of her own errors, errors that Olivia had orchestrated with precision. At the same time, Olivia continued strengthening her own position. Freelance projects had grown in scope and visibility, giving her credibility and influence. She was no longer just a former victim. She was a rising force in the same industry where Jessica had once held power. Olivia's plan wasn't about destruction for the sake of destruction. It was about justice, about demonstrating that betrayal comes with consequences. Every action she took was deliberate, every move calculated, and every result amplified her control over the situation. By the end of the chapter, Jessica was facing mounting pressure at work and social doubt in her circles. She was unraveling, and Olivia's role remained hidden. The audience could feel the tension. Jessica's world was collapsing, and Olivia was quietly standing back, watching her strategy succeed. Olivia whispered to herself one evening, looking at the Ohio skyline, "You thought you could destroy me and walk away, Jessica. You underestimated me. This is only the beginning." Olivia Bennett had spent months carefully planning, preparing, and executing her strategy. Every observation, every piece of information, every quiet move had led her to this moment. Jessica Harper, the woman who had once betrayed her, destroyed her confidence, and tried to ruin her life, was finally facing the consequences of her actions. The first signs of collapse had started in Chapter 4, but now everything was converging. Olivia had documented Jessica's lies, her exaggerated achievements, and her attempts to undermine others. These weren't just rumors, they were facts. Undeniable evidence, gathered quietly and methodically over months. Olivia had learned that patience was the most powerful weapon, and now the moment had arrived. Olivia decided to confront Jessica, not in anger, but with precision. She scheduled a meeting under the guise of reconciliation in a neutral, public place. Jessica arrived, confident as ever, unaware of the storm Olivia had quietly built around her. "Olivia, I wasn't expecting to see you here," Jessica said with a smile, the same smile she had used to manipulate her friend for years. Olivia returned the smile, calm and composed. "I thought it was time we talked," she said. Her voice was steady, controlled, leaving no room for argument. What Jessica didn't expect was the folder Olivia placed on the table. Inside were carefully organized documents, emails, project reports, screenshots, client communications, proof of every lie, every sabotage, and every betrayal. Olivia had left no room for doubt. Jessica's confident smile faltered as she realized the depth of Olivia's planning. She tried to speak, but Olivia held up a hand. "Let me finish. This is everything you did to me, every attempt to ruin my life. I didn't react in the moment because I was rebuilding, I was preparing. And now, the truth is here for everyone to see. The evidence was overwhelming. Jessica's career, once built on charm and deception, began to crumble. Colleagues who had once admired her now questioned her credibility. Clients demanded explanations. Friends and associates who had been manipulated by her now saw the truth. Olivia watched as the carefully constructed facade Jessica had relied on for years began to collapse. But Olivia's victory wasn't just professional, it was personal. She had reclaimed her confidence, her dignity, and her power. The fear, the anger, and the pain she had carried for so long had been transformed into strategy, resilience, and triumph. She had proven, not just to Jessica, but to herself, that betrayal could not destroy her. After the confrontation, Olivia returned to her life in Ohio. She continued to grow her career, her reputation now stronger than ever. Friends who had drifted away returned, impressed by her determination and success. She realized that revenge was not only about punishing someone else, it was about reclaiming herself. One evening, Olivia sat on her apartment balcony, looking at the quiet streets below. The sun was setting, casting a golden light over the town. She smiled to herself, a smile of peace and satisfaction. I didn't just take back what was mine. I became stronger. I became smarter. I became unstoppable. Olivia's journey began with betrayal, but it ended with empowerment. Jessica's world had collapsed because she underestimated Olivia, but more importantly, Olivia's world had been rebuilt on her own terms. The lesson was clear: trust wisely, act with patience, and never let anyone else define your worth. As the sun disappeared behind the horizon, Olivia felt a calm strength within her. The past was behind her, the lessons were learned, and the future was hers to shape. Jessica had lost, yes, but Olivia had gained so much more. She had her life, her dignity, and her power, and nothing could ever take that away. The story ends with Olivia standing tall, confident and free. The betrayal that once shattered her was now the catalyst for her greatest victory. She had not just survived, she had thrived, and in the quiet of that Ohio evening, Olivia Bennett finally felt truly unstoppable.